Dylan Cozens is lighting it up at the World Championships, and we'll talk Jack Quinn coming up today here on the Locked On Sabres podcast.
Your Locked On Sabres, your daily podcast on the Buffalo Sabres. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
And thanks for making Locked On Sabres your first listen every day. We are free and available wherever you get your podcast. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. Today's episode brought to you by FanDuel. Make every moment more. Right now, new customers will get $150 in bonus bets with any winning $5 bet. That's $150 with any winning $5 bet. Visit FanDuel.com/LockedOn to get started. A lot to get to today here on the Locked On Sabres podcast. Sneaky Joe DiBiase joining you today. Thanks for coming to us and sticking with the Sabres through the offseason, as we are probably in one of the slower periods of the offseason. We are, but at least for the Sabres, given that we are between the playoffs or in the playoffs and then the NHL draft, which comes your way in about a month in Las Vegas at the Sphere, where, of course, the Sabres did not win the lottery last week. They will pick outside the top 10 for the second year in a row after not really doing that for a decade. But that's a little bit later on. A lot to get to today on the show. The World Championships continue, and there are Sabres making headlines for good and bad reasons, or at least interesting reasons. So that's all coming up. I'm going to dive into Jack Quinn today as well. We did JJ Peterka on our last show. Today, his partner in crime. This is the Sabres version of Jordan Poyer and Micah Hyde. Feels like these two could potentially be riding shotgun with each other for a decade or for a very long time. They've already played together a lot. Very different season for Jack Quinn than Peterka in terms of games played, in terms of durability. But the play itself, after diving in on the numbers, looking back on some of his goals and some of his play from the past season, I came away very impressed and optimistic about what the Sabres have in Jack Quinn going forward. So we'll dive in on his role, his importance to the, I don't want to call it a rebuild anymore, but to the, getting to the playoffs, breaking the playoff drought. He is very important to that. So that's all coming up on the show. Follow me on Twitter at Sneaky Joe Sports. You can, of course, check out the show on our text line, joinsubtext.com/LockedOnSabres to sign up if you want to do that there. Before we get to any of that, though, reminder that even though we're in the slow portion of the offseason, trades can happen right now. The Sabres could make a trade this minute if they wanted to. And we had an example of that. The Nashville Predators sent Ryan McDonagh, formerly of the Tampa Bay Lightning, back to the Tampa Bay Lightning in exchange for a pick swaps back and forth, but a second-round pick goes the way of Nashville is the big piece that they get in return after McDonagh spent the last 2 seasons in Nashville. He now goes to the Tampa Bay Lightning, and the Lightning are in big trouble when it comes to their salary cap picture. If you look at what their situation is, they have just over $5 million remaining in salary cap, and that is going into the offseason now that they have traded for McDonagh. McDonagh has 2 seasons left at $6.75 million. This trade is a total head scratcher for me by Tampa. If you are a Sabre fan hoping to knock the Lightning out at some point in the next year, because they're getting older and their window is starting to close, I think this is a good thing, because I can't believe they divested their already very limited cap space, more than half of what they had available to them, to one older, aging defenseman. I was very surprised to see that, especially when the Lightning have other guys that are just kicking into new contracts. Anthony Cirelli would be one of those. Brandon Hagel would be another. Braden Point, of course. Like, they've just paid guys. And Steven Stamkos, one of two things is true here with this McDonagh trade. The Lightning are either resigned to the fact that Steven Stamkos is going to walk in free agency and will join a new team for the first time in his career, or They plan to sign Stamkos, and they are going to trade one of those key pieces I just talked about. The only one, though, that they would move, or I think move, is Anthony Cirelli. Cirelli, under contract till 2031, is making $6.25 million a year. He is 26 years old. He is a center. He is a good player. He's kind of reminiscent of that Tyler Johnson role, middle six centerman. He's very good defensively. He's finished top 5 in Selke voting twice. And he is, if you're thinking about the Sabres for an idea, if you want to help out Tampa and get them out of their cap situation, we'll send over Anthony Cirelli. He would be the absolute perfect third line center. I think behind Dylan Cozens and Tage Thompson, you would be taking on a very large investment for a player of his magnitude. But I think the player fits what the Sabres need. Maybe he'll become available. Someone to worth watch. Or we'll talk Stamkos, who will hit the unrestricted free agent market probably more likely today than it would have been yesterday because of this McDonough move. But the Sabres can make a trade at any point. Tampa just did that today. Stamkos, by the way, highlights a long list of big-name free agents that are going to hit the market in July. And the more I look at the list of free agents, the more I believe the Sabres are going to be in that game come July. So I look forward to talking a lot about free agency in the month of June, leading up to July 1st. Stamkos will be one of the names that we'll talk about on this show. But I think the Sabres are going to be active in that marketplace. We'll talk more about those names coming up next month. So that's happening. The World Championships is happening overseas right now. And in Czechia, Dylan Cozens is unstoppable right now. This guy is scoring in every single game he plays. And don't make no mistake, last time at the World Championships, Cozens played great, and he was doing it from the wing. This time, Dylan Cozens is doing it from center. He is playing center this go-round. 6 straight games, he has a goal. He has 8 goals. 8 goals. He is one of the MVPs of the tournament. 8 goals in 6 games. Guys, what did he land on as his final number? I didn't look it up because I thought I had it to heart, and I don't. Cozens had 18 goals. And remember, he got that little bit of inflation at the end of the year with some meaningless goals. 18 goals on the season. He goes to the Worlds, and he currently has 8 goals. And I believe that is the tournament lead at this point in time. I've watched a little bit of him. He's shooting the puck really well. He is scoring on the power play, which also helps, but Sabres going to use that like the whole season. Dylan Cozens scoring on the power play. He certainly would have had opportunities. He certainly could have helped out getting Tage Thompson open on the other side if he was a reliable goal scorer on the right wing on the power play. So not to make an excuse for him in any way, but where was this all season? Where was this all season? Is it a confidence thing? Is it a Buffalo thing? It's hard to not think that way, right? It's a depressing way to go about it and to resign yourself to that line of, there's a deflation when you play in Buffalo, but it's tough. Look around the playoffs. Is there you play in Buffalo, your numbers are going to be lower. Sam Reinhart, right? Ryan O'Reilly, Brandon Montour, Evan Rodriguez, some of those Florida guys are definitely going to be on this list. Evander Kane. Not all these are great examples. I know some of them had the same production in Buffalo, just not the same success. But you just don't want to think that way, and I don't want to be thinking that way about Cozens. He should have been playing better this year. There's no excuse. He should have been better for the Sabres this season. And he is. It's a good thing, right? It's not a bad thing that he went to the Worlds and he is scoring a bunch of goals and one of the best goal scorers at the tournament, if not the best goal scorer at the tournament. It's a good thing because you want him to carry that momentum into the summer, give himself that confidence shot going into the summer, go back to Western Canada or to Whitehorse and do your thing. Come back stronger, come back with the right mindset, and then carry what you're doing in the Worlds into the season next year. That's what you want to have happen. but there might have been deeper reasons why he wasn't producing for the Sabres. Now he is doing it for Hockey Canada. The other thing that's happened at the Worlds is on the same day this weekend, both Rasmus Dahlin and Bo Byram got ejected, thrown out of their games. And that was just kind of a coincidence, I guess, but it was kind of funny. In both different games, Bo Byram deserved the game suspension that he got and the ejection. He and Jesse Puujärvi, who plays for Finland, are battling in front of the net, and Byram takes a shot, lifts the stick between Puujärvi's legs as hard as you can, and gets tossed from the game, gets ejected for suspended for one game also. Dahlin, like minutes later in the other game, or maybe an hour later, he decides, I'm going to run this little Latvian dude, and elbows him in the head along the boards, just destroys this guy. He gets ejected for the game for elbowing. He probably left his feet, I think, also, now that I'm watching the hit back. So Dahlin got tossed. Byram got tossed. That's not that big a surprise, though. I saw a lot of sarcastic responses to that, like, oh, now they decide to play that way. Now they decide to play a little bit meaner. Byram and Dahlin were never two guys that was a question about, right? I mean, Dahlin, we have seen deliver big hits for years. I mean, since like his third year in the league, he really started throwing his weight around. I mean, that hit he had against the Sharks last season is like the biggest hit a Sabre has thrown in 5 years. So Dahlin will throw his weight around. That's not new. And Byram, I don't know, we didn't get to see him a lot, but he seemed like he was a little bit testy. He got in a fight, didn't he, for the Sabres at the end of the year? We didn't want him to do that because of concussion stuff. But Byram's not someone that I'm surprised by with that either. So I get it. The Sabres in general are maybe worthy of that commentary, but I don't think those two individuals are. All right. World Championships continue. Canada lost today, I believe, to Czechia, which was a little bit embarrassing. They blew that 6-1 lead the other day to Austria. Canada, excuse me. They won that game against Czechia. Czechia maybe tied it. Is that what I'm remembering? But either way, Canada won the game in the preliminary round today. USA won 6-3 over Latvia. So you've got that ongoing. Thursday begins the quarterfinal. So we'll get into the winner-go-home games for the World Championships if you're following along on Thursday. Thursday morning, you'll have the first game, 10:20 a.m. for the quarterfinals. All right. Let's take a break, and when we come back, let's get into Jack Quinn. His season that he just had, and what level of importance is he to this core going forward? That's all ahead here on the Locked On Sabres podcast. We are brought to you here on the show by Policy Genius. Policy Genius is the world's leading online insurance marketplace. Saves you time and money so you can provide your family with a financial safety net starting today. Easy compare quotes from America's top insurers, just a few quick clicks away to find your lowest price. Your work-life insurance policy may not offer enough protection for your family's needs. Policy Genius gives you the unbiased advice from a licensed expert support team. They have no incentive to recommend one insurer over another, so you can trust their guidance. Check life insurance off your to-do list in no time with Policy Genius. Head to policygenius.com/LockedOnNHL or click the link in the description to get your free life insurance quotes and see how much you could save. That's policygenius.com/LockedOnNHL. Sneaky Joe DiBiase back here on the Locked On Sabres podcast. When you are done with us, be sure to check out Locked On Sports Today. If you're sick of all that shouting on those debate shows on ESPN or Fox Sports, check out Locked On Sports Today, a free 24/7 streaming channel. It's available on YouTube or the free Amazon Fire TV channels app. All right. Jack Quinn, the next installment of our Locked On Sabres exit interview series, as we look player by player at what they did last year and what they're going to be going forward after the offseason is over. Jack Quinn, you could call it a lost season for Jack Quinn. You could. He gets injured, remember, a Achilles injury working out last summer. And that was a news drop in the middle of the summer that was just, you don't get more deflating Sabres news in the middle of an offseason than that. Oh, man, one of their important young players is going to miss a lot of time. With an injury at a tendon or on the lower ankle like that is worthy of wondering, will the guy be the same when he comes back? Quinn missed time. He, of course, missed the first couple months of the season. He got back on the ice on December 19th, and he played for just over a month. He played in 17 games between December 19th and January 27th, when he then sustained another injury. Lower body, never really found out. I don't remember if we found exactly out what the injury was. Doesn't matter. He sustained that injury, and that knocked him out for another 2-month stretch of time. Now, then he comes back from that injury and he plays the final 3 weeks of the season. And from there, it was a 9-game period from March 27th to April 15th. So we ended up in 2 different stints getting 27 games of sample size out of Jack Quinn in his sophomore season. After a good rookie year, which I thought saw him be a little bit more consistent than JJ Peterka, I thought was a better two-way player than JJ Peterka, and also was a better goal scorer than JJ Peterka in year 1. Year 2, Peterka, of course, took a big step forward in all of those categories and played all 82 games, the only Sabre to do it. Quinn, I think, showed signs that he was going to take the step that Peterka took. They both would have done it at the same time. Quinn, in 27 games played, ends with 9 goals and 10 assists, including 8 goals at even strength. And that it's pretty amazing, right? 27 games played. He has 8 even strength goals. Go look at other Sabres like Jordan Greenway, who had 9 even strength goals all season, only 1 more. How about Dylan Cozens, who had 13 even strength goals, who played all but 3 games all year, and he only had 5 more than Jack Quinn did. Quinn was great, and especially great at 5-on-5. That's an 82-game pace, by the way, 9 goals and 10 assists in 27 games. That is an 82-game pace of 27 goals and 30 assists. A doubling of his goal total, and the assist total would have come up in a modest way, and it would have been a big jump from year 1 to year 2. I think the same level of jump that Peterka took. And Quinn, as I mentioned, I've always liked Quinn as a two-way player. He's not amazing, but I think he's good. He's a fairly good defensive player. The advanced numbers show he was, on a minute-per-minute basis, pound-for-pound rankings for the Sabres, because of his games played. He was arguably their best forward in the games he played. The advanced numbers at least say that in terms of the goal scoring and the goals created. Expected goals for percentage, 5-on-5 on the season. This is where Jack Quinn ranked among all players on the Sabres, forward and defenseman. Expected goals for percentage, number 1. Expected goals for total, how much the team scores themselves when he's on the ice, number 1 on the team. Individual expected goals, so how many goals he was expected to score per 60 minutes based on his play, 2nd. Only Tage Thompson was higher. So he was, by both his 82-game pace and the advanced numbers, one of the best Sabres forwards that we saw. It just happened in a very limited amount of games. I think there's another step for him. The same way I thought this with Peterka. I think there's another step for him. But last year really showed that. The line that he played with last year, he played a lot with the line that he had played with in previous. He played a lot with Dylan Cozens and JJ Peterka, and they were very good together. They scored the 2nd most goals for a Sabres line last year, despite the fact that Quinn played so little. Quinn, who did he play with, though, on a minute-by-minute basis last season? Of course, Cozens was the guy he played the most with. He played the next most with JJ Peterka, also not a surprise. The other guys that he mixed in with, he did get a little bit of time with Zach Benson. He got a little bit of time in with Peyton Krebs and Jordan Greenway. If you look at his numbers with Dylan Cozens and Jack Quinn and JJ Peterka and without, he was a lot better with Cozens and Peterka. He is a top 6 forward. The results showed you got your best results out of him when he was in the top 6. I love the shot. He always does that little movement, that little toe drag, or he'll even walk it back more than a toe drag. Like he'll pull it back and then rip it. It's like a boomerang shot when he gets into the middle of the ice, especially. He's got a very good finishing ability. I think, given what we heard about him when he was drafted, the profile was this guy's a goal scorer. This guy's got a shot. He is a finisher. I see a much better all-around hockey player than I thought we were going to get. I thought when they drafted him, this was going to be a 30-goal guy, the 40-goal guy at his best. And that was going to be the thing he did. I have seen playmaking from him. I have seen, as I mentioned, the defensive game. I have seen his ability to carry the puck. I think I've seen every skill that I could want from Quinn. I still think the moneymaker is still his shot, but I see a lot of skills on display from Jack Quinn. Good speed, good hands, decent size. He's not too small, especially given, some of the other Sabres rookies and prospects. 6'1", 185. Like, it's not tiny. He's not big either. But I'm very impressed by Jack Quinn, and I think he has the chops to be one of the best Sabres forwards and maybe one of their best wingers. Maybe their best winger. Let's get into that. His role in the core, and where are we at contract-wise? Could that even happen this summer? We'll get to that coming back here on the Locked On Sabres podcast. We are presented by eBay Motors. eBay Motors, passion, drive, and patience. The formula for winning championships is also what keeps your ride or die alive. eBay Motors has everything you need to maintain your vehicle and level it up to peak performance. Superchargers, roof racks, exhaust kits, LED headlights, and more. Whether you're into speed, power, or style, eBay Motors has you covered. With over 122 million parts for your number one ride or die, you'll always find exactly what you're looking for. And with eBay Guaranteed Fit, your part is guaranteed to fit your ride every time or your money back. Because with eBay Motors, you're burning rubber, not cash. With all the parts you need at the prices you want, it's easy to make your car the MVP and bring home huge wins. Keep your ride or die alive at ebaymotors.com. Eligible items only. Exclusions apply. eBay Guaranteed Fit only available to U.S. customers. Back here on the Locked On Sabres podcast, wrapping these up, we're talking Jack Quinn. What does the future hold? What is the ceiling for Jack Quinn, and where are we at contract-wise? Well, let's start with his ceiling and how high I think he really could go. I think, like Peterka, I think there's a group of 3 or 4 guys that I probably could say this about. Quinn would be one of the favorites. Who is going to be the Sabres' best winger when they get good? Who's going to be their best forward even when they get good? I think Jack Quinn has the ability to be this team's best forward. I don't think he's a favorite. I think Tage is already above him, and that's a hard bar to reach if he's going to play like he did 2 years ago. Cozens, if he returns to his form, we've seen him do it at least once. We've seen Peterka now do it for a whole season. Like, Quinn's the guy we haven't seen do it for a whole year. So he's going to fall below those other guys. But is he capable? I think he's got the skill to do it. Best winger might even be really possible. It's really him and Peterka and Benson for me right now. And I think Quinn, him and Peterka are tough, man. Like, it's arguing, again, I mentioned the Poyer-Hyde comparison earlier. If you're a Bills fan, it's like debating who's better, Micah Hyde or Jordan Poyer. We didn't even bother with that for 6 years while they were on the Bills, because who cares? They're close enough. They're both amazing. And that might be what we fall into with Jack Quinn, JJ Peterka. Who is better, Jason Pominville or Thomas Vanek? Okay, we could actually sit there and debate it and probably figure it out if you want, but do we need to? They're both really good. They were both really good. And I think Quinn and Peterka might both be on track to be the best 2 forwards on this team. Now, what's going to be interesting there is their most common center through 2 seasons is Dylan Cozens. Thompson is this team's best center right now. Is there a future where they try to put together their best center, Tage Thompson, with their 2 best wingers, Jack Quinn and JJ Peterka? And by the way, I'm not also, just throwing Alex Tuch to the wind here. Tuch right now is their best winger. And it's possible, of course, that he is that going into his 30s. But I think we know what Tuck is, and that's very good. I am still thinking that Quinn and Peterka could be better than what Tuck is right now and could really reach like an all-star level of play. Tuck is a great player, but I don't think he'll ever be an all-star guy. Quinn and Peterka, I think, could. And I would, of course, group Quinn in that as he's the best right winger for sure, in my opinion, for the future. Like, I think his ceiling is what that is what I mean. Now, where does that leave him for his role? Again, I mentioned like maybe there's a future with him on the top line. I like the idea of Quinn playing on a shutdown line. Maybe Peterka someday. Maybe they'll have to split. Maybe Peterka, because he's more offensive. He's a little bit more dynamic, fast, speed. Maybe Peterka's future is on a scoring line with Thompson. And Quinn's future is playing opposite side of Zach Benson, who is also looking like he's going to be an amazing two-way forward. He's already very good defensively. Benson and Quinn can be the wingers on a shutdown line, a defensive line that also scores a lot of goals, controls possession, and, can just drive play that way. I think Quinn and Benson have a future playing together, just feeling out their styles. You might be thinking, well, Cozens is the perfect center for that. Again, I got to see more from Cozens defensively. I think he's overrated right now as a defensive player, and I got to see more before I'm willing to put him as the centerman on a shutdown line like that. Maybe an Anthony Cirelli. They trade for Anthony Cirelli and put him between Jack Quinn and Zach Benson. That's a shutdown line that can also score goals, and I would love that type of line for Jack Quinn. There's also an argument. You just put him on the top line, you put him on the second line, and let him score as many goals as possible because he's probably going to score a lot of goals. So, versatile player that I think you could do a lot of things with. Is this the time to sign him to a contract? I asked Kevin Adams that last month, and he said, we're not close to it. I asked him about Peterka and Quinn, and he said, it's something we'll broach, we'll talk about, and never say never, right? Like, he left the door open to it. The vibe I get, though, is that they're not going to do Quinn this summer. Maybe they get to Peterka, but Quinn only playing 100 games in his NHL career so far and coming off a 27-game season, maybe one full year under his belt before they want to give him. I think he's the 7-year, 8-year contract guy. One proven year of play that he just had, and I think you sign him to the long-term extension for really good money. And he is going into the final year of his contract, but then he'll be an RFA at age 23. So I think there's a big ceiling for Jack Quinn. I think he is a top-line potential guy that also I like the idea of him being on a long-term shutdown line someday with Zach Benson. All right. Jack Quinn, very excited about his future. That's going to do it for us, though, today here on the Locked On Sabres podcast. We'll do 2 players on our next show, Jeff Skinner and Alex Tuch. We'll tackle the veteran forwards at the top of the Sabres lineup on our next show. And Jeff Skinner, will they buy him out? We should get that in now before maybe they make a decision, although I still might guess that they don't. But we'll talk more about that coming up on our next show. Thanks so much for tuning in today to the Locked On Sabres podcast, making us your first listen every day. Be sure to check out the national show, Locked On Sports Today, Amazon Fire TV, or on YouTube, streaming 24/7. We'll talk to you next time here in the Locked On Sabres podcast.